Hello, everyone. Today I decided to tackle the Attasic, the Attasic universe, and its mechanics. And I say tackle because this is the one thing of everything I've received all through these many, many years of work, over 50 years, that is the most elusive, the most difficult for me to not only describe or put into some comprehensive format, but for me to even understand, simply because it keeps moving around. It's like in the material that I've received on it through many, many years. Thoth will mention it here. He will mention it there. Over here it's mentioned. Over there it's mentioned. Never one big form of this is it kind of work. And every time it's mentioned, it seems slightly different. It's not contradictory. The statements aren't contradictory, but they're just elusive because you put them all together and it's like they're all going in different directions. So obviously, many years ago, I should have just sat down with him, with the Attasic stream, with Thoth the being, with whatever we want to call all of it together, and said, hey, let's understand this. I really need to get a handle on the Attasic. But I never really did it. First of all, there's always so much coming in, I get distracted and go off in another direction. But mainly it's because I didn't want to do it. It's just, I knew it was going to be really deep and really hard to put it all together. And I thought, well, I'll do it some other time, and it just never happened. Now, I'm not even saying I'm trying to do all of that now, because I have a feeling it would be like some huge manual, but I'm going to just start. We have to start somewhere, right? So in this respect, I'm going to try to start right here and see how it goes. So the first thing I did was I wanted a brand new definition, a core definition of Attasic. I wanted to pretend I didn't receive anything else on it, and I just wanted to start from scratch. So this is what I received, and I just wrote this down a while ago. The Attasic universe is a release from all polarities. It is not a dimension. It is a soulic field, S-O-U-L-I-C, new word, but basically it means of the soul, a soulic field of being. From a cosmic perspective, the path to the Attasic within our holograph is through the nebula in the constellation of Leo. Through this node, the soulic field would expand and define its perpetuity as the golden star of Mazuriel. Thus, one could say this golden star is the entry into the Attasic universe. The neutral universe is not the Attasic, but it is the direct interface with the Attasic state. In this sense, it is the plane of the Attasic, a platform for its substantiation as a reality. Now, the other thing that's been so elusive is this neutral universe, matter universe, antimatter universe, because it comes out of the whole Attasic thing. So it's part of that understanding, and it's also been very elusive. Though sometimes refers to the antimatter universe state as the ultra. Sometimes he doesn't. So you see, there's a lot of stuff going on there too. So let's get back to this. First of all, before I read on, I used to think when Thoth said universe, he meant universe, like I mean universe, like we all mean universe. But as time progressed, and we're talking about, when the Attasic thing came up, it must have been 30 years ago, maybe 25. And when you start talking about universes, the ultra, or the neutral, the antimatter, the matter universe, when you started talking about that too, it was back then, the same period of time. But as time progressed, I began to realize when other things came up where we used the word universe, that universe is far more expansive concept from the Thoth extreme than it is from our understanding. A universe can contain planets, stars, blah, blah, like we see here. But it can contain other things because a universe is a mind. It is a a mind package. You know, it's a mind. Some minds have this in it, some minds have that in it, some minds have nothing, nothing that we can comprehend or apprehend is a better word. So if we think about it like that, we can understand that when he says Attasic universe, it's a whole different creature, from the threefold universe that contains the neutra in the center, so to speak, and on either side in our diagram, we have the antimatter and the matter. He also sometimes calls the antimatter the ultra, but let's just take that out of the picture. Let's just keep it simple. So we have an Attasic is really an entirely different creature from this threefold universe that can be divided into three universes: the Attasic, the neutra, and the matter. Attasic, I'm sorry. the antimatter, the matter with the neutra in between. Okay, now that I've confused you entirely, let's continue. On either side of the neutra are two more universal states. One is the antimatter and the other the matter. While this trinity can be viewed as separate universes, they can also be seen as simply a threefold universe. There is also the Attasic savata. This is a spheric horizon, which we have also referred to, this is Thoth speaking, as the horizon of Aton. Aha, the horizon of Aton. That's something he's mentioned a lot. I had no idea it had anything to do with the Attasic until just now. So the Attasic savata, and that's an entirely new word. I looked it up and it's just surnames of people in India, is the horizon of Aton. It is the generative cell that creates the threefold universes. It is Attasic, meaning released from having any space or dimension. This is not typed correctly. From, R-O-M, having any space or dimension. The Attasic is also the sacred nothing, or I. I wrote about that, gosh, in 1968 or 70. I had no idea that that had anything to do with the Attasic, but now that I think about it, if I actually know what I was writing about, the sacred nothing, the Attasic, it makes perfect sense. But until I received this, I didn't realize that. We have referred to it as a universe, as this term most suits the human idea of a field of being. The neutra Attasic, now he's going to start calling the neutra universe, or neutra part of the threefold, as the neutra Attasic, so we get the idea. With the anti and matter universes form a triptych dynamic. Now, this word triptych just came into my periphery 4 or 5 days ago, and I was looking at, I'll go to it in a minute and tell you how this came up into my field, but not at the moment. Okay, one could see the neutra Attasic as the Christhood, with the anti and the Holy Spirit as the Holy Spirit, and the matter realm or universe as the manifestation. So Thoth is always identified in all the different things he's written about, given me, that is, I've written about, on the Attasic as being Christic, Christ-related, and a universal Christ, not the religious kind. So now he's identifying the neutra Attasic, that neutra universe plane that identifies with the Attasic as the Christhood. So that is consistent. Well, several things in here are consistent, but some are new. Okay, so if we see this triptych dynamic, which I'm going to start calling it now, of the Christhood, neutra Attasic in the center, with the antimatter or Holy Spirit on one side, and the realm of matter or the manifestation on the other. It kind of gives you a better idea, a better picture, at least it does me, of these dynamics. So now, this is just a very, very rough draft, quick, give me an answer, though, very basic understanding here. There's a lot more to all of this. And I'm not going to even be able to cover all of that in this video because I don't even know it all yet. But I'm determined to start on this path and really, bring it into focus here because I believe it's important. At first I thought, well, is it really important to us, these little ants on Earth, other than knowing that there is this sort of thing called the Attasic, blah, blah? Maybe it's not that important because it's just so far removed. It's like us all sitting around for centuries contemplating our belly buttons and trying to figure out what God is, So I thought, does it really serve any purpose for the here and now? Well, when I asked that big question the other day out of sheer frustration, I got, yes, it does. But maybe not in its fullest sense, not in every detail of it, no. But a lot more than I have been able to receive so far. So that's why I'm going into it now. Okay, so let's look at triptych for a minute. This is the new thing for me that I discovered. I'm going to go back to this later. Got all these windows open. This fellow, and I'm really impressed with his work. I just discovered it on YouTube the other day. This is his website, though. richardkisara.com. Richard Kisara. I'm going to read about him first because I'm very impressed with this young man. Richard Kisara is an author, researcher, and filmmaker from New York City. He came to international recognition in 2011 with his best-selling book, Written in Stone, Decoding the Secret Masonic Religion Hidden in Gothic Cathedrals and World Architecture. His 2016 book, The Missing Link, Powerful Evidence of an Advanced Golden Age Culture in Prehistoric Antiquity. He also believes in long titles, doesn't he? Provides further evidence for his discoveries. His travel and life experience has provided him with rare insight into megaliths, mythology, magic, symbolism, comparative religion, and occult archaeology. And all of his research is meticulously referenced and cited to a high academic standard, a rarity among works of this genre. A lifelong explorer and field investigator, he has recently opened his own touring company, Triptych Temple Tours, LLC, aimed at leading travel adventures to Egypt, Peru, Mexico, Italy, Spain, India, China, and other ancient sites described in his research. He is a much sought-after public speaker. To book Kisara for your event, please fill out this form. Okay, well, all of you who are listening to this who like to go on spiritual tours, have the funds, resources, and physical health to do so, I would highly recommend this. And if any of you decide to go on one of his tours, please contact me. I want you to be my fly on the wall. Okay, that said, let's go into this page for a moment. The word triptych, Triptych Temples of Atlantis. Triptych means, very briefly, and if you look it up in regular Googling, you'll just find a bunch of paintings, but let's see, where is it here? Let me get to his, well, you see the three doors? You see the big door in the center and the two little ones on the side. Okay, that's triptych. The big door in the center, from my standpoint, with the Attasic and all the threefold universes, the big door in the center is the Christic door, and he equates it very much to that in some of his works here. That is the Neutra Attasic. On either side, we have on, let's say, the left side, because that seems to be where those places it in some kind of a, a picture dynamic, is the antimatter. But he also likes to call it the ulta or ultra. And on the right-hand side is the manifestation, the matter, the manifestation. So he goes, Kisara, and here he is on YouTube. Well, this is his channel. He has a YouTube channel, but that's not what I'm looking for here. Just a moment. I know I have it here somewhere. No, that's not it. I have so many windows open. Oh, here it is. This is one of his videos where he talks about the triptych, just the very beginning. I just want you to hear this. Now, when you listen to things on my Zoom medium, which I'm using here to record this, when you listen to things other than me, it's a little gray, it's a little fuzzy, but please, you can understand it. So just kind of lean close and just hear this very first part of what he's saying here. Whoops, it's going to take a while to get into it.
I talk
Let's find it right here.
Universal religion in antiquity. So we saw how medieval operative cathedrals built by the Freemasons encode this 3-in-1 door triptych entrance. And finally, I talked about how the Gothic architecture surrounding the triptych in these cathedrals symbolizes the very same balance of opposites teaching that we see in the ancient cultures, thus revealing the meaning of the triptych. The architecture around the cathedrals reveals the same balance of opposites as the ancient triptych temples. So it's very clear to me, and the way I explained it in the book, that the Freemasons really understood the ancient meaning of the triptych, and not just in one ancient civilization, but in Asia, in Africa, and in the Americas, as we talked about yesterday. So today I want to start by pointing out some of the more esoteric triptych architecture that's hidden in famous artwork. And here's an example. Take a close look at the triptych 3-in-1 window behind Jesus in the famous Last Supper painting. Notice how it matches up with the image on the bottom. The image on the bottom shows a window from a Masonic temple. And as you can see, the triptych is the common denominator here. I found that fascinating because it shows a connection, really. And it shows how the triptych is at the center of this connection. Now, with 6 apostles on one side and 6 apostles on the other side of Christ, it's clear that Da Vinci really wanted to convey the idea of a balance, you know, and again, you have the balance of opposites, 6 on one side and 6 on the other. And the message here is, when you balance the twin sides, you find the center. And again, from yesterday, we talked about how the center was the God self, the inner spiritual soul self, the higher self.
Okay, I'm just going to pause for a moment. When you balance both sides, you find the center. Well, the neutra, Attasic, the neutra part of it serves to divide the two so that they don't collide, and matter and antimatter come together and go boom. That's kind of a simple way of putting it. It's very simple. There's a lot more to it than that. But the Attasic aspect of it, the Attasic aspect is what he's talking about. It is waiting for the two sides to balance. And as they balance, the Attasic signal changes. I don't know if changes is quite the right word. It elevates. It gives you more of the signal through the plane of the neutra. I say you, the universes. We have to realize that when we're talking about this, we're talking about us, because the universe of any universe comes out of us. The Attasic comes out of us. When I say us, I'm talking about the divine spiritual beingness that we all share. And each of us contains a fractal of that. And of course, in holographs, you know, the fractal contains a picture of the whole. So we cannot place this outside of ourselves when we're speaking about the cosmos. The cosmos is in us. The universe is in us. It is projected through our field of resonance as an outer experience, but it is in us. So this is the core dynamic of us and of our cosmos as well. And the meaning of how we develop within that pattern, that principle. So let's go just a little further here.
And that is a God, according to esoteric philosophy, Freemasonry, Hermeticism, and so on. This inner divinity, as we call it, is depicted by the Christ figure. And notice how he's aligned with the center door. Christ is aligned with the center door. In esoteric Christianity, this so-called Christ principle stands for the inner soul, the inner God. It's the eternal and divine part of us that was never born and never dies. The 20th century scholars like Gerald Massey and Alvin Boyd Kuhn discussed this idea of the Christ principle in their books, lectures, and research papers. They showed how Christianity is really based on a corruption of the pagan teachings regarding this idea. For the pagans, the Christ did not refer to one man. There was not one Christ over there. It denoted the inner soul or the inner God that we all have within us. And that's a very important teaching. Here we have a quote from Massey. Christ was the immortal spirit in man. It did not and could not depend on any single manifestation in one historic personality. Historic Christianity originated with turning the teachings inside out and externalizing the mythical allegory in a personal human history, a huge and hideous mistake.
Now, I'd like to pause here. Now, I agree with most of this. And what was the huge and hideous mistake was stopping at the point of Yeshua and not seeing the bigger picture. However, many people, and I don't know if this is true of or I've forgotten his name, but the young man that's doing this, but many people, when they reach that point, they decide that they're going to throw Jesus out with the bathwater. And according to Thoth, that soul, that advanced soul that had never incarnated before on earth and had to have a secondary soul bring him in, and that's what Thoth calls the Osiris, or sometimes I've forgotten what the other name is. Anyway, the Osiris soul. That soul and that embodiment, the Yeshua, Jesus, Yeshua, which is true name embodiment, was up to this point in time, the foremost embodiment of the Christic consciousness on the planet. But it wasn't the Christ, end all, this is it, nowhere else, this is the whole, inshallah. It was not that. So Thoth validates Yeshua as the bearer, the Christ bearer, the ultimate Christ bearer up to this point in time on planet Earth. But that is not the whole Christos. And Yeshua never said that. In fact, I would be willing to bet, and I'm no biblical scholar or ancient historical scholar, but I would be willing to bet you could find references that have not been tampered with somewhere, in scrolls somewhere, maybe in the Nag Hammadi library or whatever, that would reference the greater Christic field in some way, even if it's very allegorical. So that said, let's continue just a bit further. This whole thing, of course, is going to be fascinating, but that's not our topic. So we're just going to go just a little bit further and see what's said.
More recently, in his 2005 book, The Pagan Christ, Rhodes scholar Tom Harper resurrected Massey's teachings, and he said, the Christ principle is potentially in every one of us. Christ of the myth became a flesh and blood person identified with Jesus. And again,
okay, I can see he's going to go on with this. This is a fabulous video, and I'm going to watch the rest of it. It's called Researcher Discovers Incredible Ancient Secret Hidden for Thousands of Years. But this is on this fellow's site, and I would suggest that you want to continue with that video and other Richard Kisara. You go to his channel. You're going to find, I think, everything you want to see there. So, so now let's just pause on that a moment, on the triptych. And I want to go back and talk about other aspects of all of this. Okay, we're going to go to my Numis Om stuff here on Spirit Mythos. And here we have the Lion's Gate. The Attasic universe is the unified field of full Christ awareness. It is beyond all duality, the true holy home of all souls. The new Earth star is not developing in the Attasic, as World 2 systems are still in some form of duality. However, the last stage of the new Earth star will be likely the top star of the Christmas tree, just touching the ripples of the Attasic. Through that gate, souls will gather into the Attasic in the no time of complete oneness. The welcome golden star of Mazuriel is the home star of all souls in World 2 systems. Now, what I'm saying here about the souls will enter the Attasic will enter them. We don't travel into the Attasic. I put that in various places I've kind of alluded to that. But really, that's not the best way to translate what I was receiving. Again, remember, this is a pathway I'm trying to redefine here. The Attasic enters you. The Attasic enters the being. The Attasic is in the being, actually, but let's say it flowers in the being, because you can't separate yourself from it, so you can't say it enters you, or you can't say you enter it, because that's separation. So we'd have to, the best way to put it would be the Attasic flowers. As it flowers in graduation, it becomes a fuller and fuller spectrum within the world, the universe, the world, the human being, soul, whatever, you know. So let's go on. What Thoth calls the Lion's Gate is our constellation of Leo. It is composed of 3 of its stars, the nebula Regulus, the lion's heart, and, you know me in words, algebra. Algebra, oh, that's good, I can get that. A binary system consisting of 2 stars. The actual portal to Mazuriel in the Attasic is the nebula, yet Regulus is the engine, the power that powers the field which links the nebula in the universe with the Mazuriel in the Attasic. The binary system of algebra is the third eye, the point where the Akashic of Mazuriel flows into this universe to guide and inspire souls onward into Mazuriel's embrace. As a binary, it also gives balance to the threefold stargate. Okay, here we have threefold again. We have the triptych again. We can find the triptych right here in this definition. We have the nebula is the Christic gate, so that's the center. And we have Regulus as the engine, which would be the manifestation. And we have the third eye, algebra, as the Holy Spirit, as Thoth calls it, the antimatter. So there's another triptych right there identifying it. Remember, everything we see in the universe, all the stars, the planets, the constellations are all in us. And we project them outwardly into the universe. I say in us, I don't mean this little fleshy body. I mean in the spectrum that we contain the fractal of. So this whole system could be found somewhere reflected in the parts, the sum parts of, in the parts of the whole, the parts of the whole. So we have, like we have in the pineal gland. What is the other person that I really love his work? Oh, I'm so bad at names. And he shows the brain and everything and how it relates to Orion and the vault of Orion and all of that. So in our physical bodies, we have some reflection of this triptych dynamic in the cosmos that allows us to experience it, because it truly is within the universal spectrum of us. A whole bunch of related links, which might be interesting, but we're not going to pursue them now. Okay, in Numisome, and Numisome is the actual first stage of the New Earth star. And throughout the evolving stages of the New Earth star, the Lion's Gate is present as a companion. Through it, the hierarchies of Mazuriel guide the process on all higher world system 1 and all world system 2 evolution. Yet, it need be understood that in Mazuriel, an Attasic non-dualistic star, there are no hierarchies. So why the seeming contradiction? Because the hierarchies of Mazuriel do not abide within Mazuriel, and thus not within the Attasic. They dwell in the ripples to be found just between these two universal states. The ripples Thoth calls the Zuvuya. Of course, Zuvuya is not just solely a Thothic term. I thought this word seemed familiar, so I Googled it and came up with the book Surfers of the Zuvuya by Joseph Greas, which I have not read, and Carl Elkins, PhD, states that the Zuvuya is a Mayan word which is a cosmic wave of energy that both defines and connects us all. And, okay, so getting back to Thoth's view, the Zavuja is a ripple or wave effect caused by the two planes of duality and non-duality. That's what we're now calling the Holy Spirit and the manifestation, touching and yet not able or intended to merge at that point, thus creating the ripples of interconnectivity with the essence of return. With the essence of return. I'm not sure. That's a little clouded in meaning there. Let me read that again. Thus creating the ripples of interconnectivity with the essence of return. I guess it's the pull, the draw to return to source. A few specifics to fill in the complete Thothian cosmology. The place in this universe where it began, or rather burst through from the Attasic, is in the vault of Thoth within the constellation of Orion. It is here we find the Eye of Ra exposed by the universal tear. The Eye of Ra is the point where all the universe's ley lines converge. It is a pinpoint of leakage into and from the next universe. From the Eye of Ra, also called the Heliomar by Thoth, is emitted the pristine creation substance into this universe. The double dynamic of the eye is a blinking effect that is a flashing double diamond responding to the quasar-like pulsing of the touching of the two universes. That would be the Holy Spirit and the manifestation. And the Nutra Attasic, it keeps them from colliding, touching, but there must be some kind of a flickering touch on a quantum level that this Nutra Attasic permits or even stimulates. The Eye of Ra is interdimensional, so our most powerful telescopes cannot see it, yet it is visible on certain dimensional levels. The Eye of Ra in Orion and the Lion's Gate in Leo are intimately linked on the inner planes. Their point of linkage is yet in another space place, the star of Sirius in Canis Major, the great dog. The lion-headed sun, Lord's guardian, let me read that again. The lion-headed sun lords, guardian the Eye of Ra through the temple capstone of the Telesakara. The Lion's Gate is the point of feeding the light codes between our universe and the Attasic through its golden star of Mazuriel. The gate vault of Orion is where we connect to the Metatronic spiral or full light spectrum. Yet beyond the Metatron is the Attasic, where the one is beyond light as we understand it. Now, I'm going to pause for a moment. It always makes the camera jump, but I need to pause for just a moment. So the point in the vault of Orion that houses the Eye of Ra is the Trapezium. And I didn't even know about the Trapezium when I started writing and receiving all of this, but now I do. And I want to share with you, if I can find it again. This is excerpts from my larger video. Oops, portal video. Whoops. Let's try to get this together here. From a portal video I did some years ago, a few years ago, the Tree of Osiris. But I'm going to just play this a bit of this excerpt here. The music is going to sound horrible over Zoom, secondary like this, so I'm going to try to turn the music off, but I'm not sure. Oh, there it is. Let's see if I can bring it down to nothing. There we go. Now, the music's really cool, but it's going to sound awful here, so let's just do without that. Here we go. Uh-oh. Well, I guess you can see it. Okay. It's leading up to the point that I want you to see here. Capstone of Horus, the kingdom of eternal presence. The Hora capstone. The Telesakara. These are different dynamics of the whole that are being mentioned here. The Trapezium of Orion. And so now, in this scene here, which I got off the web someplace, is what Thoth calls the falcon path, approaching the trapezium. And we have a hymn to Osiris that I put here, but I'm not going to read it. I just want to impress you with the point where if we could see it, would be the Eye of Ra, somehow configured within this trapezium. Now, I have not gotten into that yet to see how it's positioned or any of that. You know, this is something that I'd have to live to be 220 or something to be able to put together all these things, which is unfortunate. I'm hoping that from my core group, some will come along to be able to continue that work in some way, even if they aren't, you know, working with the records in the way that I am. They can tap into it and take my work and continue it. Say, well, Maya said, Thoth said up to this point, and oh, now I see, and bring in some of the other aspects and take it further. Because I just ain't going to live long enough to do all of that, considering that I'm nearly 70 now. So here we go. Anyway, in here somewhere is, and there we show the Metatronic seal, but, you know, we're looking right at the trapezium. You see it swirling around there. And then I have taken it, placing various videos that I collected and put together, down through the trapezium into the whole dynamic. Whoops. Well, that's the end of that, because that was that was just an excerpt. So let me get out of here. Anyway, we can see the trapezium as a threefold again. That's the idea. And all of this is like different facets of the one thing. It's a threefold dynamic. Think of the Trinity, how much the Trinity means to us in all these different aspects. And we can all boil it down to the principle of the Attasic in the center and what we're now calling right now the Holy Spirit dynamic on one side and the manifestation on the other. Perhaps I'll come up with better terms at some point here. So I'm going to pause again for a moment because I really have to collect my brain at this point. It's sort of in little pieces all over the place. So now we're going to go to this article, Quantum Physics, Time, and the Akashic Records. This is on my archival Spirit Mythos website. Now I'm going to attempt to read this aloud here. I will say again, as I've said many times before, I have cataracts. It's very difficult for me to see this tiny print. Before too long, I'm going to have the cataract surgery, and I'll be so much better at reading things. But right now, this is how it is. So I want to read it, and I'm going to try my best here with this tiny print. As a collective, we tend to think of the past as an immutable reality. One cannot change the past. However, according to my Akashic insights and my conversations with the illumined being Thoth, time is a mutable wave of energy that reacts and thus changes in accordance with variations in the anomalies of the timeline. I don't know if I want to read all of this. Let me look down, because I don't want to make this too long. I'm trying to find the part that I really want to read to all of you. So I'm going to pause for a moment. Okay, well, I decided not to read that article. It just doesn't hit the spot of where I wanted to go with this. And so this is just a primer to the Attasic. So, you know, we're going to be talking more about it as more falls into place, because I am going to be really trying to, you know, zero in on it a little more these days. I feel it is a tremendously important topic and really the basis of everything. So I will be getting back to it. But right now, I just want to sort of capsulize it all in some way and say that the Attasic, well, we or calling it universes here because Thoth is giving that terminology. We need to go beyond the term of universes. We understand it and see it as some kind of a field. And that field is quantum, absolute quantum. And yet, it's beyond that. In other words, it generates, all quantum mechanics are being generated from the Attasic. So that's the truth of it. It is not quantum itself. It is being, all quantum fields are generated from the Attasic. And they're generated through the Zavuya, I can't say it right, but those ripples that come out of it. All universes, and the universes that I have been shown in this context are all threefold universes. So 3 little universes inside one universe. There may be other kinds. Well, obviously there is if you're going to call the Attasic universe. But right now we're talking about the threefold universes being created out of the Attasic field. And we are one of those. It's convenient to see them all in spheres or bubbles, just to see our little bubble floating along. And one bubble can touch another when the membrane, and when the 2 brains meet, information is exchanged, and possibly wormholes as well. Most specifically, I would say yes. So the Attasic is everywhere and nowhere. Thoth is just relating it to what I wrote about many years ago, the sacred nothing. And yet it is the commanding presence within everything. Doesn't that kind of sound like God? So maybe we could call the Attasic God. But if we do that, then we have to assume that there is nothing else. Which is a conundrum because God is an open-ended topic, is it not? Excuse me. But for the purpose of understanding our picture here, I'm going to say the Attasic is certainly our God field, okay? And when we look at the threefold universe, divided into mini universes, M-I-N-I universes, we have one-on-one, we have the middle pillar, or the middle window, or whatever you want to call it. That's the Christos. That's the Christic, universal Christic field. It's the plane where the Attasic infuses a realm, a plane, and that is the Nutra. It has no polarity to it. It has nothing in it. It is neutral, and yet it is divine. Because if we're going to look at the Attasic as a godness principle, if the Attasic presents itself within that plane becomes divine. On one side of that plane is the Holy Spirit. And what Thoth means there is the transduction, that's something that's transmitting the Spirit, transmitting the presence of God. It's constantly in transmission. On the other side is manifestation. The transmission leads to manifesting, and that is the matter realm that as we understand. So that's the best picture I'm coming up with right now of the whole shebang. But of course, there's always more. Now, there's one little thing I wanted to look at a little closer, and that's the horizon of Aton, because Thoth equated the Attasic savata, meaning some kind of a, what did he call that? Let me check and see what he said about that. Hold on a sec. Okay, the savata, where is it here? What I just wrote. Here, there's also the Attasic savata. This is a spheric horizon, which we have also referred to as the horizon of Aton. Okay, folks, I'm going to take a look at this. Just hold on here. Well, I was trying to find in my material on the horizon of Aton. It's been mentioned, gosh, at least 5, 6, 7, 8 times, I'm sure, through the years. But I can't find it. And probably the reason for that is it's a relatively new mention. That is within the last, probably between year 2000 now, so within the last 18 years. And so that means it's not in my older written material, like on, when I say written, I mean publications, you know, that have been put into Evernote. So if I search that, I come up empty-handed. It means it's one of my websites somewhere in deep underpinnings of a website somewhere. And I did a few searches and I couldn't find it. So if I find it later, I'll talk about it probably. So for now, I'm not. But this Savada thing does interest me, and the fact that it is the same thing as the Horizon of Aton. I will get to that. Maybe I'll do just a video on that, you know, as the next step in all of this Attasic stuff. So I believe I probably rambled on long enough now, and I hope that I was able to make some sense of it and that you followed me along the path of making that sense. So that's all I have to say for it for now, and thank you so much for listening.